What's up, YouTube? This is Racing's Natural Aquariums, and I'm coming to you with a quick update on the Nat Geo Biological Filter Media. I have to say, after using this for a few weeks, it's actually turned out to do pretty well. Water kind of looks cloudy up in the top, but it's actually not. It's just all the air bubbles coming from my hang-on filter. But as you can see down in here, it's pretty clear. So I'm running 2 trays full of the media, sorry for the mess, in the canister, and I threw in a couple handfuls in the hang-on back, and I also utilized the polyfill in the canister on the bottom tray above the medium and coarse filter. My Amano shrimp out there thinking he's a fish. My baby Cory getting big. But definitely impressed with it, and for spending $6, can't complain. It's actually doing its job pretty well. And I am very impressed with the Fluval 2.0 light that Cory from Aquarium Co-ops did a review on, because I managed to fry my Phoenix, which I loved. The only thing that I don't like about this, in order to really get it to cycle through, is either with a timer or with the Wi-Fi piece that you connect into it, and then you can use your phone to control it and set up kind of a 24/7 or sunrise to sunset. So that's about $100, so it's really not a big deal for me. And actually, I don't know if you can see it, but there's another huge Amano right underneath that fern. They're doing well. I've had those guys probably well over a year now, along with some other shrimp that are hiding. So, at any rate, with the light, you can see right there my Apongegeton actually produced flowers. And that stem runs from there all the way across and all the way down. And yes, I didn't take it out of the pot. It actually, with the wool in there, it's holding the beneficial bacteria. It's also holding the ferts that I dose with, so it's definitely, if you look in some of my other videos, you can see that octopus plant, which I did get from Cory at Aquarium Co-op, was small, and now look at it. As well as the Apongegeton crispus up top, that was small, now that's pretty much in the front and midway in the back, so it's definitely doing it's doing well. I do dose with Thrive All-in-One, and then over here I have some swords and some crenums. There's another crenum over on the right hand side, which is buried in the back. But since using the root tab and dosing iron as well as the root tabs from H2O plants, the Bacopia there is kind of holding a little bit of a red tint to it, and the crenums and the swords are taking off quite well. So definitely something to look into. And then the plant that I've had forever, all mishmashed in here, is one of my crypts that when I first planted it over a year ago, it was only that big. Now as you can see, it's up in here, it's growing out, and it's growing up into the light. So I have to say, between the addition of the Cascade 1000, I also use Marineland Right Cut filter media, cut to size for my hang-on bag, and the Nat Geo, it's actually really kept this tank clear, and as you can tell, it's overstocked. But based on the filtration, I haven't had any problems. I dose also API CO2 booster, which there was some algae along the ferns, but since I started dosing it, that's kind of started to go away. This plant started from just 2 or 3 leaves, and now this is all the original plant, all the babies, all down in here, some anubias, some boost. So it's doing quite well. And a little bit of a hot rod here. As you can see, what I've done is I have a piece of the Marineland Right size filter media I cut, and it's actually sticking underneath this cover and going down in the back, so it's filtering the water as it comes in, especially because of this design flaw where the water would just come out whether it was filtered or not. So here at least it's getting filtered coming in before it rolls over the top. Same media used in both of these. I kept the old trays and just cut it to fit it. Now when you go to Petco, you actually see this. I did this before Petco, or started doing this before Aquarium. They actually offer, for some of the smaller filters, this type of sponge or whatever filter media that you can either use it to remove your phosphates or to get rid of ammonia and things like that. So what I did after putting in the biomedia that's down in the back, I also use prime. There's a prime bag in there, and there's also a prime bag in my canister filter. I cut this and I wedged it in the cone. More beneficial bacteria, more area for it to grow. So then also, I cut it, and this is the part that you'll see in Petco now, and actually wedged it down into the little lip where the water hits and drops. It does make it a little bit noisier, but I don't mind it because I have a sponge filter attached down on the intake tube, which is one of the, almost like a closed cell, so it kind of gets mucked up pretty quick. But I was watching an old video where Corey and Lamont were talking about the sponge filters, the pros and cons, and then, excuse me, it gave me an idea as far as, because I do have such a mixed bag of fish in this tank, as well as shrimp and stuff, I didn't really want to go with another filter, even though I have probably 5 hang-on backs that I'm going to use for other projects. I've eliminated the dead spot here by utilizing the spray bar. I've kind of churned up some of the water here by creating a little bit of a backflow in the filter, so at least it puts out more surface agitation. But what Corey and Lamont had talked about, using the sponge filters and dead spots, I was like, well, I could actually add, because as you can see here, there is movement, but not a lot. And this is kind of where my guppies hang out if they're not playing in the current. Right there. Because I have such big plants there, I could actually hide a sponge filter back there and eliminate that dead spot. So, you know, it was a great video in explaining a lot of the benefits of having a sponge filter. And because I'm going to be probably starting a tank that I got for free and making that a shrimp tank, I can put my sponge filter in here. I can take the existing sponge, put it in the other tank, and have a cycled sponge in there. So, but outside of that, my moss has grown like wildfire. This actually is covering my stone cave, comes up, covers part of my driftwood, and it was coming up in the back as well. So I've actually trimmed that down, but this is probably as natural as you're going to get. Pretty soon I'm going to have to trim. This was almost gone several months ago, and I basically took one of the pieces that were floating and rooted it in the substrate, and lo and behold, it's now from back here all the way up here. So it makes a good hiding place for my shrimp, my fry. There's probably about 4 or 5 generations of platies and guppies in here. First generation cories, which I didn't even know were in there. So, you can go above and beyond in breeding and setting up the tanks and doing everything. Here, because of how heavily it's planted, it actually allowed them to scatter their eggs or put their eggs somewhere out of sight and out of harm's way, that I wound up with 2 cute little cories. So that worked out well. And here's the funny thing was, several months ago I bought a striped Raphael, and as soon as I went in the tank, once or twice you'd see it and then it would disappear, even with the blue light on. So I put in some Rapashi grub pie or community a couple nights ago, or probably about a week or so ago, and I see something moving back here behind the pot there, and I bought 2. I bought one, and then my girlfriend couldn't see it, so she's like, I spent $10 on a fish I can't see, so I bought another one. Well, lo and behold, about 2 weeks ago, I saw the movement. There's the tail of one, and his head is way up here. He's probably about that big now, about that big and round. And the other one is tucked up way back up under the end of this piece of driftwood. So they're alive and well, and for some reason my coolie loach took residence up underneath him. Occasionally I'll stick his head out here, and then my black coolie loaches will swim in here, my school of neons and cardinals, and my fry will swim around there, and they don't bother anybody. So definitely happy about that. I do have snails in the tank. Unfortunately, they hitchhiked in, which really isn't a big deal. They're helping keep my plants clean. But going back to my Raphaels, it's kind of funny because I scored quite a few books over the last couple months, this being one of them. A couple there, and there's probably a couple floating around. But as I was reading through it, because I'm looking at rainbow bettis, probably better known as scarlets, for another tank, 29 that I want to put over here. In the book, it talks about how the Raphaels will eat the fry, and they're not really good for a community tank. And that's actually written in this book, which is kind of ironic because this book, trying to see when it was actually written here. The reason I'm pointing this out will make sense in a minute. Kind of hard to do this with one hand. This book was published by TFH in 2007, and in just a few years, a lot of what's written in here has been changed. The end of the book talks about 10 fish that you should avoid. Out of those 10 fish, there's probably 3 or 4 that have increased in popularity through the years. There were a few other things that I had read, that I had come across in various books, which got me thinking about the sorry, I'm kind of doing 10,000 things at once here. So what I was saying was that the reason I mentioned that book and what was written then and what has happened now belong to a lot of different Facebook pages. Some of them are just ridiculous. Other ones are a lot like our fish family. We take care of each other, we respect one another, we love each other, and we want to see everybody succeed from the youngest to the oldest. But on some of these pages, it's somebody will ask a question, and it will be somebody will chime in, give an answer, and then somebody will dispute it, and that their way is the only way. And we all know in the fish family that what works in my tank may not work in yours, and vice versa. And that book kind of proves that fact, that this was a well-known author within the hobby that wrote about the fish and their behaviors. I think there was even something in there about bumblebee gobies, or puffer, goby puffer or something like that. Not good in a tank, that you shouldn't own it. And it was ironic. I just happened to go to my local fish store and I saw a fish called the half-beak. It kind of looks like a gar pickerel, but the beak is short. It doesn't go from top to bottom like that. The book talks about that's not a fish to have. I think it might still be true, with the caveat that the author put in the book about they're really not for beginners. Now, my local fish store doesn't have any sort of warnings or information about the fish, so I would hope that the staff, because the staff is pretty decent, would forewarn somebody that this is not a fish for a beginner. One of the reasons is they have a very delicate diet, and that takes some preparation in order to feed them properly. They also can become aggressive. So, part of the statement in that book that I showed you earlier kind of holds true, but I think that anybody that does enough research, regardless of the fish, can take one of the tougher fish to raise and actually do it successfully. So it's just funny how, like Dwayne Kitchell had done a live stream about how much the hobby has changed in his time, as well as in my time, and as you younger folks are in the hobby, to see how much it's changed. And it was funny because I made a comment on his video about where did we see the hobby going? And I said something along the lines of basically a tank that is self-sustained. You don't have to do anything, put water in it, instant cycling, throw the fish in it, and enjoy. And I just happened to have been on a website or something, and they now have a tank that is almost self-sufficient. I think it was something along the lines of everything was included to get it started, which that's not anything new. But there was some stuff that it would do on its own, and I didn't really get a chance to read into it too much. So, something I said in jest is actually in its infancy now. So, but there's some other things in the book that, contradict, things that you and I would do in our tanks, in our aquariums, whatever the case may be, that many years ago, one was either never thought of, or it was a major no-no. And, I read an article where they spoke about the inch per gallon rule that a lot of people like to use as a means to stock their tank. And the article talked about that it's not accurate anymore. And, because you're putting in an inch or 2 inches of substrate, you've now decreased that 55-gallon tank to, due to water displacement, maybe to 50 gallons. You dose medicines, you're dosing ferts, whatever it is, based on the actual gallonage that tank was sold to you for. So those little subtle changes, a lot of fish takers are taking great care to take care of their fish. And the part of the article went into discussing volume with a tank when getting fish and maximum size. But the key to the article was that inch per gallon rule I mean, it's a good basis for a novice who's just getting into the hobby to try to make it a little more enjoyable till they gain more experience and more knowledge. But by today's filtration, you can successfully overstock a tank and maintain a healthy environment for your fish or your invertebrates. But that stuff wasn't taken into consideration back when that was kind of broadcast in the hobby, that this is how you put fish in your tank, which was kind of funny because I do go to one of the chain stores, and I won't mention the name, where I've bought fish and some stuff from them several times, which a lot of those neons and cardinals you see I did get from this chain store. Colors were a little weak. Now they're healthy. Colors are back bright, and they're alive and well. And I had gone in there a couple weeks ago to, I think probably to get some more neons or cardinals, whatever the case was. And the girl started, asking me some questions, which I was fine with, and I told her, I've got a 55, it's planted, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I want this fish, and I think I got black coolies, which are hiding up underneath the striped Raphaels now. Said, well, you really can't put that fish in the tank because, how many fish do you have? And I kind of gave her a rough estimate. And she's like, oh, no, that's overstocked. It's an inch per gallon. And I said, I chuckled inside, and I had said to her, I said, I appreciate the information, and I'm glad that you're taking the attempt to educate somebody. But, I've been in the hobby since probably the early I worked at I worked at Petco back when it first came about. I worked in the fish department. So I did have a fish probably since the 80s, I would say. I'm kind of dating myself here. And, I said to her, that's kind of old school. And, you need to take into consideration, yes, what you're going to stock in it, what size the tank is, but also what sort of filtration are you using, how regiment is your tank husbandry. I said those things can allow somebody to add a little bit bigger fish in the tank, or add a few more fish in a tank. I think the key when speaking to a customer would be, really the characteristics of the fish. All right, they're small and cute. Oscar example, small and cute. You can buy them a little bit bigger than a 50-cent piece, which, we know that over time they're going to become the elephants of a fish tank. That's something that a newbie or a novice in the hobby really needs to know about. And suggestions that, do you want the tank to be more of a relaxing or aesthetic tank to look at? Do you want a lot of color in the tank? Do you want to be able to breed fish? Or, are you just looking at these fish because they have pretty colors? But, you need to keep in mind, guppies, prime example. You may start out with 5 or 6 and wind up with 200 in a matter of a few months. And like I said, I have probably 5 generations of guppies in my tank, and I started probably with 10, so they've taken right off. So, and she kind of looked at me, and at first when I started coming back at her a little bit, and I was being nice about it, she kind of got smug like she was a know-it-all. And then when I started suggesting things and, kind of the source where the information came from, then we just had a normal conversation like we would have in a live stream. And, after everything was done, she got me my fish, and she went to apologize. And I said, no, there's no need to apologize, because if I was somebody new, then, that information would help to some extent. So you were putting the right foot forward. So I do appreciate it. But there are times I've been in the same store where I've watched a family come in and the kids point out this molly and that platy and this algae eater and that, and they want to put it in one of those little plastic 5 or 10 gallon tanks. And I kind of cringe, but I'm like, you know what? As much as I'd like to go over and say something, I don't want to step on the store clerk's toes. Maybe if they kind of walk away, then I might say something to them, because I did have an experience there where somebody was getting a tank and they were getting bettas for one of the small 5 gallons or 2.5 gallon tanks. And, the store clerk scooped up the fish, pointed to the tanks, did this, and let them walk away. So they were kind of looking at some decorations and stuff, and I kind of walked up and I said, oh, I see that, you got 2 betas in that tank. I said, I'm not sure. I said, but if I may, just give you a little insight. The store clerk didn't mention to you that these 2 fish can't be in the same tank with each other because they'll kill each other. As well as I see that, your daughter has platies. I said, odds are they're going to possibly harass, attack, and or kill the other fish. And with that, I said, there's been, in a bigger tank, there has been a lot of people that are very successful in keeping those fish together. But just so that you know, and she says, oh no, she says, we're going to divide the tank. I said, well, with that being said, you're cutting off the tank and you're going to cordon off, a betta on one side and another betta on another side, but you're going to throw these other fish that you bought in there. So now you don't have the space. So just keep that in mind, and then we talked a little bit more, and I gave her some websites to check out and, things to search on YouTube for. So they were thankful. But, that's what we do in the fish family. We help each other out. And I'm kind of sorry I rambled on. I haven't really been putting out too much because I've just been so busy and, just not a lot of time. A lot of times I'll come into the live streams and kind of lurk and, occasionally mod a little bit, but I'm usually just listening, doing other things. But the main thing is, I just wanted to come in, say hello to everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. And give a quick update about that Nat Geo, which looks like somebody on a Facebook page posted a picture. They kind of called it Cocoa Puffs, because that's what it looks like, of Eheim. And I do have Eheim Biomech mixed in with it as well. And it did a good job. It's expensive, but since I've thrown that Nat Geo in, my tank was crystal clear. But now it's like the glass is dirty on the inside. I have to clean the glass. And I had just fed them, so that's why the water's got a little tinge to it, and there's a lot of bubbles coming out from that filter. So it definitely is clear, though. So many projects on the horizon, but now I'm trying to find a little bit bigger place to live because MTS has hit me hard, and as you guys know, there's no cure. And I think that's about it for now. So again, folks, thanks for stopping by. Like, subscribe, and comment. I would certainly appreciate it. I did break 200 subscribers, which came as a surprise. I thank each and every one of you for subscribing to the channel, and hopefully now with the nicer weather, I can do a little bit more once I get my schedule changed under my belt. And see you guys in the live stream. And hopefully the channel will keep growing, and I'll keep putting out stuff that you guys want to see and hear. I'm thinking about doing it, and I'm not stepping on Captain Savage's toes because this has been in my mind for a long time. The piece of driftwood and that cave that you saw in my tank are from a local river. About 2 years ago, I was walking the shorelines after they reduced the level in the river. So what that does is leaves a nice, we had some flooding, so a lot of the driftwood got pushed up higher up on the bank, and as they drain the river down, you can walk for, miles. And I happened to go out in February and find that piece and some rocks, and I want to do a video about that. So hopefully at some point before the water levels come back up and I can't get down there, I want to do a video on that. But I found, in my experience with the driftwood, being that it was up on the shoreline, it was allowed to basically bake. The sun, the rain, the snow, eventually, it just kind of weathers the wood and gives you that nice driftwood look to it. But it also allowed for the sun to bake on it, dry it out, kill the parasites that might have been in it. I did prep it, though, the key to driftwood, if you're hunting for it locally, is clean it. Get the bark off of it, get any rotten spots off or out of it, and scrub it well. And if you can, boil it to get the tannins out, or bake it and then soak it so that it'll waterlog. With mine, I had 0 tannins in the water. I did soak it in the tub for about 3 or 4 days, kept pouring boiling hot water over it, would keep scrubbing it every now and then finally I put it in the tank. It was not waterlogged. I took fishing line and some stone on the one side and tied it down, and then I put a bigger rock in the corner that's covered up by the plants that you can't see to hold it down, and now it's waterlogged, but I never had a problem. I did have a quick thing of biome film, which was fine. The shrimp and some of the other fish picked it off, and then eventually, once the tank settled down, it was gone. So hopefully I'll get a video out about that sooner, if not later. And again, thank you all. I really appreciate your comments. I appreciate your subscribing to my channel, and it gets me motivated, wanting to do more. Quick shout outs, David Bedencourt. If you're into monster fish, check them out. Big J Aquatics, check them out. Another person that's into monster fish. Big J, sorry the loss of your one monster there. Aquarium Co-op, check out his channel. Stop by the live stream. Steenfod Aquatics, check out his channel. Stop by the live stream. We always have a good time. DBK, Laura's channel, Short and Anxious, Kayla C, Priscilla, great artist, check out her channel. Nisi, SLC Aquatics, great woman, fun live streams, check her out. Kyle's Wild World, he's back, check him out. V-Stag, check out his channel. Oh, I almost forgot. Check out Dwayne Kitchell. The man is on fire. He's been doing live streams. He's been doing unboxings. He just bought a Nikon high-def camera. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot more coming from him. He is a wealth of knowledge. LR Bretts, when it comes to shrimp and breeding and stuff like that, check out his channel. Luke Diesel, very knowledgeable when it comes to shrimp. If you've got questions, want to learn anything, stop by his channel. And Glorious Bettas, if you're into bettas, she's got an awesome channel. And there's up-and-comers like Flynn's Fish Room or Flynn's Forum. 13, 14 years old. This kid is on fire. He's got great content, interviews, you name it, he does it. Abby the Red Wolf, up and coming. She joined the Fish Fam probably just within a year or so. Now she's starting to put out videos. So there are so many people out there that have such great content that, I feel bad because I like to watch everybody's video because I like to still learn, which is why I have all my books and everything else. And I watch all these streams that I can. But definitely check them out. And keep those sleeves wet. God bless and peace.